Hello everyone, this is Monster Bloba coming at you with another Kindred Fates video. This time we're going to be talking about how the 2v2 game mode for Kindred Fates could look, potentially. So far, all we really know is that it is coming, and it likely is not going to be here until maybe beta or later. So that being said, let's get started. First thing I wanted to talk about is something I've seen talked about a lot in the Discord. Some people think there should or should not be duplicates allowed for your teammate. So for example, by duplicates I mean, if I had a shovel on my team, should you be allowed to have one on your team as well if we're teammates? And I want to talk about the pros and cons for both here. The pros for duplicates is more variety for your tactics, like you and your teammate can synergize two different shovelets working together. And then one of you can do quicksand, and another one can chain that into a rock slide at the same time to help make it so that your enemies can't escape as quickly as they might be with just a single shovelet, for example. The thing I think of as the most compelling argument for allowing duplicates is more freedom for both players to play what they like, though. This means that if you have a favorite kinfolk, and I select your favorite kinfolk as the kinfolk I'm going to play, that you can still play it, so everybody gets a chance to play what they want to play. And then the other argument, which is not particularly relevant, but I thought I would at least mention it, is less kinfolk will be needed overall before we can begin testing, which means we would technically get to test it earlier. The cons for the same kinfolk is if a kinfolk is overpowered, it'll be made twice as strong by being allowing two of them into the game. So Shovelet right now, as the same example, is pretty strong right now, very hard to kill. And it would be very, very annoying, especially in a 2v1 situation, to fight two Shovelets at the same time. Even if you won, it would just take forever to whittle them down. And some kinfolk would just be 100% broken if you had two of them doing the same combo. Like, imagine those two shovelets I was talking about earlier. They both use quicksand one after the other, so that it's essentially never on cooldown. And as soon as your opponent's about to get out of it, you do one on, like, right where they're about to exit from, so they stay stuck in it, especially if it's against somebody like Ember, who doesn't have any movement options. You could just basically trap an Ember in eternal quicksand, which would be pretty broken and not really fun for anybody involved there. Now let's look at the pros for the doing kinfolks with no duplicates. One, the devs will have less balance work that they need to do, since the kinfolk themselves won't have to be balanced to work as if there was two of them on the field. This is something that the devs will definitely have to consider, especially if they decide to put duplicates allowed. Because if 2v2 is going to be a legitimate game mode and not just a meme mode, you're going to need to balance two shovelets spamming quicksand like that. You're going to need to balance two embers using an explosion into another explosion, immediately one-shotting a kinfolk and stuff like that. And you need to kind of have that in mind when you're developing the 2v2 game mode, if you're going to allow it to be a seriously and competitive game mode, similar to how the 1v1 is. So if they don't have to do duplicates, then they have less work for the devs, which is always a good thing. Next pro is the teams will have to put much more thought into their picks, as each pick would mean locking a teammate out of that kinfolk. This could lead to more strategies and more diverse meta teams. What I mean by this is, once we have an ample amount of kinfolk, obviously in the beta right now, and in the alpha right now, we only have 7, so even if they added an extra, it'd be the exact same kinfolk every single game, because we would only have 8 total with no dupes. But assuming, when we eventually get into the hundreds with the final game, not hundreds, but over 100, then there will be plenty to pick from. It'll be not dissimilar to picking champions on League of Legends. And you could have, I want to play Slifer. Well, that means my teammate is not going to use a Slifer, so maybe they could pick something that synergizes with my slifer instead of using another slifer, and then you have more ideas than just saying, hey, let's stack 2 slifers and then sublock this guy to death. It could make it a more fun and diverse meta. Now, some of the cons for it is some people could not get to play their favorite kinfolk. Like I mentioned earlier, if you allowed duplicates, everybody could play any kinfolk they wanted, but if you didn't, then somebody would potentially get locked out of their favorite. And obviously it might not be fun if somebody takes your favorite. Like, if your favorite kinfolk is Shovelet, and then your teammate like locks in Shovelet, you might feel at a disadvantage there, like, man, I can't play a kinfolk I'm really familiar with, and I really like the looks of and animations of the movesets of. So that could be something to watch out for. It would mostly be an issue in random queue, but if you're queuing with a friend, you can still work this out. So it's not like a completely and utterly soul-crushing con that you can't get around. It's just another thing to consider. And 2, it could take longer before we get to test the game because more kinfolk would be needed for the game to be tested. Like I said, we would need a minimum of 1 more kinfolk to be added, and preferably we would have like a total of at least 10 kinfolk before 2v2 is added if we could not do duplicates, just for the sake of variety, so every game wouldn't be exactly the same. But moving on to how combos might work, what kinfolks work together in a team right now, what power would be strong if you use it at the same time, and so on and so forth. One of the interesting things that's been mentioned by Joey quite a bit is a Lumala plus a teammate with Black Mask. This would allow you to heal your teammate a lot easier and more actively than you currently can. So let's say your teammate's running a Black Mask Slifer and going in, doing huge damage, and then darting out really fast. Your Lumala could hang back, sniping with Righteous Light and his just normal basic attack. And then your teammate comes back, you pop down Angelic Ray, they get some healing while you guard them, maybe plug your own Shovelet or something like that, and put up a rock wall of basically just rock slide, just falling down, blocking enemies' view, and that could be something pretty strong and interesting to see. Speaking of Shovelet, Shovelet will work amazingly with status effects teammates. It already works really good when you put a quicksand down, and if you're quick enough, you could throw a scorch or caustic cloud on it. This would just make it even easier in duos, just because you could target one of your enemies, throw quicksand on them, and then quickly throw a status effect on them before they're able to get out if you and your teammate coordinate well enough. Those are just a few of the cool matchups we could see. As for the strong moves, I think quicksand would likely become the best move of the game. It's already a strong move and something I kind of almost feel naked without, if I'm playing without Shovelet, because it has so much utility. Does decent damage, slows your enemies, has good range. It's just overall extremely versatile move. But in a 2v2 setting, it would become borderline broken because of how many combos you could use to pull it off with. Rock Slide would fall into a similar category here because that it has a really large range and good damage, and if you plop that down on both of your opponents at the same time, you could literally rain devastation upon them, and then if they get slowed by it, your opponent could take advantage of that much more quickly than you could if you were solo. And then Angelic Ray is the other one I've mentioned earlier. I mean, that you could heal your teammates, and the fact that you'd be able to heal your teammates at the drop of a dime like that without having to switch kinfolk like you do normally when you're trying to heal your own kinfolk could prolong your teammate's life by a considerable amount. And maybe with some of these moves from your teammate, they could cover you while you buff up and make it more viable to buff in open maps, like put like Rock Slide providing cover for you if they put that on the enemy team while you want to buff your mech kit or something like that, who doesn't have any cover options, or even Caustic Cloud, for example. But next, I want to talk about team size. This is another one of the topics that came up in the Discord. Whether the team should consist of 8 kinfolk aside, with each player controlling 4 kinfolk, or if it should be smaller with only 4 kinfolk aside and have each player only control 2 kinfolk each. Well, here are my thoughts about it. I think that if they wanted to implement the 2v2 sooner rather than later, potentially doing it now, even, or maybe adding only one more kinfolk and doing it, and they decide they want no duplicates, each player controlling two kinfolk would probably be the way to go. But that would be for testing purposes, just like a prototype of 2v2. I think that could be really nice to see. It could potentially be easier to implement and easier to balance than the full roster, but it would be something I don't think would be nice in the long run of the game. It would be nice to just have 2v2 in a really rough form in the alpha. So if they decide to go with that, I definitely would not complain. But I think in the final game, the 2v2s should have both players controlling a team of 4 kinfolk in total, so that it is truly a comparable experience to the 1v1s. But we'll have to see how it actually pans out after we play before we make any final judgments on that. That about covers what I wanted to talk about today. Let me know what you guys think about 2v2, if you're excited for it, if you guys might be interested in playing it with me in some community events in the future whenever they add it, and what speculations you have for it. But otherwise, thank you all for watching. This has been Monster and Bloba signing off. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Goodbye, and God bless. See you all next time.